Hey everyone, Bahn here, and people always come over and ask me about how do you set up all your consoles and why do they look so good? Well, I figured I'd do an informative video and let people know it's not just about having all the old consoles, being a collector of some sorts, which I am not. These are actually systems that I've owned throughout time and I've never sold them. I just kept them. So I haven't gone out and bought any new ones or anything like that. I have made some repairs to some of them, which I'll discuss in this video. At the heart of this is, well, to play the old games, well, you need no input delay. This right here is a 4K Vizio P-Series TV. And it's the 50-inch. You can get it at Costco for about $6.99. I know what you're thinking, 4K, hey, why would I want to play these games in 4K? Well, the being is, these games, when they were played on older TVs, we never got to see the real color gamuts of these games being played on the consoles because they always had to be converted to a format that those older TVs can handle. Well, with the new stuff today, with HDMI, everything's a digital signal. So what you want to do is you want to get that pure digital signal out of these consoles and push them to the screen. There's several ways you can do this. There are products out there like the FrameMeister. It was, very good product out there that'll take these old signals and bump up the resolution to something these TVs can handle. In the chip of the FrameMeister, there's a Marvell Kyoto chip, which is also in this Onkyo 609 receiver. So what this receiver will do will take low resolution video and bump it up to 720p or 1080p. And then I send that 1080p signal to the 4K TV, which is known to have very, very little input delay, which is essential for the older games like, shoot 'em ups and fighting games where frame perfect timing is really, really important. Let's go through the systems real quick. This is the Mega Drive Tower. It's a Genesis Model 2, a Sega CD, and a 32X. And a lot of people have issues with this setup because it requires 3 power packs, which are those big hulking AC adapters. Well, there's a product out there called the Sega Trio, which will power all of them with one cord. So that's really nice because it saves up a lot of space, saves up power, and it basically allows it for everything to be plugged in. As you can see, I have an EverDrive in there. I don't really believe in emulation. I figure if you have the consoles, might as well play them on the actual hardware. And most of the time, the games come out a lot better than when they're emulated. But I do have an EverDrive. There is a flash card in there, and I have every single Genesis game, 32X game, and Sega Master System. For those who don't know, the Genesis actually had the Master System hardware built in, so that's pretty cool. And here are my collection of Genesis games. I got some good ones in there. There's a Samurai Showdown. You can see some 32X games up bundled in. Now, what I do to make the Genesis look really good is I get that RGB feed, as I was talking about, and I feed it into this guy here, which is a switcher, which also takes video from my Super Nintendo, which also has an EverDrive, and takes video from my Sega Saturn. And what I do is I fit all those RGB cables to this switcher here, and then I have a scaler that's right here underneath this one. It's hard to see. And that'll output that 240p signal that the Genesis, Super Nintendo, and Sega Saturn send it, and bump it up to either 720p or 1080p via HDMI, which brings it down to this Onkyo, and then I just output that to the 4K TV. I know it sounds like it's a lot to do, but trust me, the results are definitely worth it. I never thought, growing up, that the Genesis had really good video. I always thought, well, Super Nintendo's where it's at. It always looks better. Now I know better that the Genesis really was a lot better than people gave it credit for. And those games that, sometimes just looked really, really crisper on the Super Nintendo, the Genesis just looked garbage. I mean, it was just grainy and faded. The colors were gone. Now that they have them both on RGB, the edge that the Super Nintendo used to have is not really there. As a matter of fact, there's a couple games where you can tell that the Genesis runs in high resolution, and it's interesting because I always thought the Super Nintendo was significantly more powerful, and it does have better features than the Genesis. I mean, it came out 2 years later, but they're more on even ground now when you have them hooked up through, you know, a 4K television. And that's a good thing. They look really good. Okay, so I talked about the Saturn. The Saturn's the same deal, RGB. It looks phenomenal. I mean, this console means a lot to me. This was my first console that I bought with my own money when I was around, I think, 15, 16 years old, working at a job in New York. So that console means a lot to me. Next to it is the Sega Dreamcast. A lot of people will know that was a failed console by Sega. To me, it was a great console. I bought that the day it came out in Japan. I actually went over to a store called Game Express and picked that up. Now, this console has native 480p output via VGA. Now, this receiver, although it does have a VGA input, will not read the sync signal of the Dreamcast. So I had to get a VGA to HDMI converter and do it that way. 1080p from the Dreamcast down to this, back up to this. So that looks pretty, it looks really, really nice. Definitely looks really nice. Excuse me. This is a Nintendo Wii. I'm not a big fan of the Wii, but I am a big fan of Nintendo. And what I do with this one is I basically use it as like a GameCube player for my GameCube games. GameCube games, a lot of them did support progressive scan. The thing is, though, on the GameCube, the cables had the encoder, not the console itself, which was kind of strange. That's why those cables are so expensive. You can see them on eBay for about $90 to $130. And you're better off just getting a Wii and getting a multi-console component cable for about $15. The quality is a little bit better on the component than doing Wii 40p, but what you do is you send the 40p down to the Onkyo and let the Onkyo use its scaler, which is the same as the FrameMeister, bump that up to 1080p, and then shoot that out to the 4K once again. Here's a PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2 doesn't have many games in 40p, but it does have some. Once again, I'm using component cables for this. Down to the Onkyo, up-resing it to 1080p, boom, to the 4K TV. Now, this is an interesting console. This is the Xbox, the original one. And it is modified. I've had it for years. And I have tons of games on there. And it's great because the video output on the Xbox, just doing component, there are certain games that will actually run in 720p and 1080i. So the Xbox, to me, was like the first real HD console. I mean, I know the PlayStation 2 had a couple of 1080i games, but they were just up-converted 480p games. This gave you the real deal. A couple NBA 2K games, and Soul Calibur 2 looks absolutely gorgeous in 720p coming out of the Xbox. And the Xbox had an amazing video encoder. So the games look really good going from component to the Onkyo to the 4K. And we have here an Xbox 360. And I use the Xbox 360 as kind of like a poor man's video box for on-demand and for HBO Go and certain other things that this TV does not have yet. The Xbox 360 takes care of that. And plus it has a lot of retro games. Xbox Live Arcade is the reason why I own an Xbox 360. It's some nice games on there. I usually just put it in 720p because it has low input delay, which, you know, matters a lot to me. And then via HDMI to the Onkyo to the 4K TV. And last but not least, I got this as a gift a couple years ago from my fiance. She was just my girlfriend back then. I got a PS4 launch. And on this, it's 1080p native. So basically just HDMI this, down to the Onkyo, right back to the 4K. So that's pretty much it. What I can say is this setup is ideal for me because it's in a small room. I've got 2 floor standing speakers that give it stereo sound. I have all my games here. As you can see, I've got quite a few cartridges and everything. Then in this room, I just keep my old DVDs, like little anime garbage that, you know, nobody else in the house wants to see. And it's a square room, and I do have 5.0 surround. It's hard to see that speaker over there, but there's one over there, and believe me, there's one over there. And it's pretty good for this room. So, next video, I will show off the video qualities of each of these connections. And they all look amazing. And what's nice is that, like I said, Vizio did a really great job with this video P series. There's no delay going into HDMI 5, which is 4K 60. And I tell you guys, it's pretty breathtaking when you play an old console from 1989 and you bump up that res and you keep that great quality on a 4K set in 50 inches. The only problem I had was the controllers back then, they weren't used. You know, they weren't made to be played on TVs this big. They didn't even exist on commercial use. So you have to get like controller extensions and whatnot. But playing on the real hardware is a lot more gratifying than playing on, say, an emulator of some sorts. Alright, so I'll be back with another video to show you guys how this stuff actually looks, so I'm not just talking out of my ass. And I'll see you guys soon.